Hi. Welcome. Introduce yourself in the chat. Hello, everybody. Come on in. Come on. So good to see you. Introduce yourself in the chat. Hello. Who are you? Where are you calling in from? Come on in. Welcome. Come on in. Hello. All right. Hello, Trina. Good to see you. Hello, Jory. Good to see you. Meryl, Julianne. Hello, everybody. Come on. Hi, Tara. Good to see you all. So glad you're with us. Hi, Karen from Vancouver. Laura, Indiana. Hello, Kristen, Wisconsin. Hello. Yes, come on in. Are y'all ready for this conversation? Hi, Ronnie, Trish, Alicia. Hello. Ubuntu, hello. Back to ya. Hi, Nicole from Seattle. Hi, Carly, Danielle, Maryland. We've got people from everywhere. Hi, Emily, Jocelyn. Hello. Pacific Northwest. All right. Breaking generational cycles. I love it. Come on, y'all. Come on in. What are you up to? Come on. Hi, Sunshine. Carlo. North Dakota, Lakota country. Yeah. Hello. Come on in, Lori. Eliza from DC. So good to see you. Hello. Come on. We've got something in store for you. Hear from these amazing panelists. Come on. You won't be disappointed. Come on. Hey, Jeannie. Hello. Nakachi. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, from LA. Hello, come on in, Shakira. Come on, Mary, Aaron. Yes. All right, we are going to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. And for those of you who may be new to us, I'm going to introduce Embracing Equity just a little bit here. Embracing Equity is a national nonprofit social change agency dedicated to racial justice and DEI education. We do this by guiding immersive experiences to cultivate the mindsets and practices necessary to create an affirming, inclusive, and equitable society. We partner directly with schools, organizations, nonprofits, and funders to build more equitable systems from the inside out. So we're dropping in the chat right now. If you want to schedule a free, say that again, free 30-minute chat with us, it's in there. I welcome you today to this conversation, Real Talk, Real Action. It's a webinar series that really, honestly, it's just a part of our ongoing work to freely share resources, knowledge, research, and collective learning together. At the end of today's episode, also, we will share a sneak peek of the next one coming up on January 31st. So, when we talk about social impact, right, the title of today's episode, Burning Bright, Staying Strong, Sustaining Leaders of Color in the Social Impact Field. So really, let's talk about like, what am I even talking about, right? Social justice reform, legal reform, any reform that is happening around social justice, schooling, education, health, all of those areas is really what we are talking about, okay? So as we are talking, we're going to also drop that link to our next one that's coming up on the 31st. We'll drop that in the chat as well, because you don't want to miss that. We are going to be coming to you all talking with timely topics, things that are happening now. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panels of speakers, fabulous speakers who are with us here today. First, I would like to introduce Lori. You want to wave to the folks, Lori Henderson. Lori is a proud auntie, yoga teacher, and accomplished social impact leader. She's passionate about access to opportunity for people of the global majority. And right now, she's currently leveraging her education and experience to drive social impact through technology as a product manager. So, we're going to drop her blog about yoga, philosophy, and anti racism. Also joining us today is Malika Aban. Malika is the executive director at the Legal Rights Center, a nonprofit public defense corporation located in Minneapolis. She's a social worker by trade who is passionate about seeking justice for communities of color and interracial movements for equity. She lives in Minneapolis with her husband Kenneth and her kitty Mila. We're going to drop in the link also there to her organization. And last but certainly not least is Daisy Hahn. Daisy is the founder and CEO of Embracing Equity. Daisy has really taken her personal experiences, it goes all the way back. And that's another webinar that you need to join us for, right? It goes back to when she was a kindergarten student. That early, pressing her nose against the window as her mother was leaving her in what she thought was very capable hands in the education system. And as you might guess, that was actually not the case from that very moment. So Daisy has done this work. This has been lifelong work for Daisy in doing this. And so you get to hear about part of her journey as well. We're going to drop in the link. Her blog that she just wrote, how she almost quit in 2023 in this work that she so strongly believes in. And so more about that later, y'all. So before we begin, because we are going to share some stories, we are going to share some experiences that we've had, some good and some not so good. And so what we're going to open with actually is some wholeness. Let's do some quick breathing with each other, because here's what we know. In thinking about this, the body keeps the score, right? So together, if you would get comfortable in your seat, relaxing your shoulders, really just away from your ears, hands on your table or your thighs. And let's take some deep breaths together. Let's do deep breath in, hold, and release. Closing your eyes if you need to. That often helps me. Let's take another deep breath in, hold, release. With each release, y'all, releasing some tension you might be feeling, your worries, your anxiety, stress, when we're thinking about war and even work, our to do list. Let's take another deep breath right before we begin to dive in. Deep breath in, hold, and exhale. And as you come back to the call, lifting your eyes, looking at folks across the screen, just think about your intention for today, for being here. Is it to lean in? Is it to lean out? Is it to support another leader of color? And that is what one of our hopes are as you leave this webinar today.
So, Dr. Evans, I want to add on to your wholeness exercise.
Yeah.
And I want to invite the folks who are here with us to get some water or find a way to sustain yourself even in this moment. One of the things that I like to do is when I'm on Zoom, I try to challenge myself to drink like half of whatever container I have in my hand, or, take the laptop to your couch or something, do something to get a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Yep, I've got my mason jar right here. Daisy has her, maybe her Stanley. I don't know if it's Stanley or not, right? So grab what you need, y'all. Grab what you need so that we can be here and be here together. Thank you, Lori, for that addition. All right, come on, y'all. Let's get into this timely conversation. Now, we're obviously, based on the title, doing this webinar, conducting this webinar to sustain leaders of color. And we have actually had some white leaders reach out to us to say, is this just a conversation for you all to support you all folks of color? And so, is this webinar for me? The answer is yes. It is for you. It is for everyone. We all have a responsibility to support leaders of color. And specifically, what we're going to really talk about based upon this panel, women leaders of color. It's not up to us. I'm going to say this part again because I want everybody to hear me on this. It's not up to us to figure out our own solution. It's not up to us. And if that's resonating with you, let me know. Let me know. Let me know in the chat. This matters to everybody, right? So by now, most of you have heard about Dr. Claudine Gay. We've heard the news. At first we were excited. She was really, ceremoniously earned, not given. I want to say that clearly. Earned the title and role of president of Harvard. Come on, that was huge for us, right? Then, just after 6 short months, she was just as ceremoniously driven out of this position. Driven out, right? Right here, right now at home is just hitting really close to me right now. One of Missouri's 2 HBCUs, Lincoln University, just lost the vice president of student affairs by suicide. By suicide. Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey, who was an alum of that university, Lincoln University, she took her life last week. Now, this was following repeated, not one, there, as the young folks say, we got receipts. Okay. This was following repeated emails to the university's president and the board saying this regarding her treatment by the university president. She asked on numerous occasions for support. She shared her diagnosis of depression and anxiety. Guess what, y'all? She wanted to do a good job. Again, folks were saying, well, leaning on her to solve this issue. She asked for help, did not get it. And it led her to believing that the help she needed was to leave, not only the field, but this earth, right? Many leaders, really, particularly women of color, have been ultimately faced with an unspoken or unwritten choice, which, quite frankly, if you ask me, is not really a choice. But the choice has been your life or your work. Now, for some, like you think about it, this is a noble choice, and there should be no shame attached to making that choice, which often it is. Women of color are often shamed into a decision, right? She's shamed into thinking, I just need to go. And if you decide as a person of color that I'm going to do both, I think I want what I'm asking for is for you to help me make this a healthy balance, right? And when you decide that, you then run the risk of also being driven out. You want to balance. You don't want to make this job priority above everything else. You've got to go. Women of color are asked, right, in implicit and explicit ways sometimes, to work harder, to make more sacrifices. And women of color are often left with the feeling that their work is just not paying off as it should be for them. I have this feeling, is what I'm hearing, right? Well, research has shown us that this is not just a feeling, y'all. Elizabeth Linos, an associate professor at Harvard, and two colleagues conducted a recent study. That study compared how career outcomes differ for folks of different races and gender. They specifically looked at turnover and promotion by race and gender for about 9,000 new employees in an organization. Here's what the study found. No shock to many people on here, probably. The study found that for Black employees, 30% of them were more likely to have turnover in their first 2 years. And Black employees were also 26% less likely to be promoted on time. Now, further, a remarkable fact that arose in this study that there was a double disadvantage and strong effect for Black women. These are several issues that we are facing, that are being faced by leaders of color and specifically Black women. So here we are, y'all, together. We've known it, we've felt it, we've been quiet about it though. So today, come on, join me. We're saying the quiet part out loud. We're saying it out loud. So I I really want to start with Lori and Malika with a question to you. How have you experienced this nuanced problem for Black women? So let's start there, and then we're going to pull Daisy into the conversation as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Evans, for this framing, and Daisy and Embracing Equity for hosting this space. I'm sitting in my office right now. There's construction happening in our kitchen, so I apologize. I tried to do the minimize background sound thing, and we'll see if this works, but I can't think of a better conversation to be having in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, with all of this happening. And I'm here, feeling some sense of guilt and shame because I'm having the conversation and my staff is reaching out to me for questions. And it's a lot. It's just a whole lot, y'all. So the organization that I work for, which I love my work. I love this place. I'm the first Black woman to lead this organization. We're a 54-year-old nonprofit in Minneapolis, founded by Black people and Native people. And I'm the first Black woman in this role.
Wow.
And I was asked to step in when my predecessor, who was a white woman, left unexpectedly for another job opportunity that she had. And the board asked me to step in. And I was in this what felt like such an odd choice and predicament, especially as a younger person too, to be I love this organization. I love this place. We have legacy. We have roots. We're doing this social justice work. We're freeing children from cages, right? I want to be a part of this. I want to lead in this space. And I knew that this place didn't have the institutional supports and cultural supports necessary for me to thrive and I'm surviving, but I don't know every day if this is sustainable. And that's an incredibly scary place to be. I think about the examples that you talked about, Dr. Evans, with these amazing Black women and leaders who were very aggressively driven out of their roles.
Yes.
And I think that's one part of the conversation that's really important to talk about. I hope and pray that I never experience that, but I do think what I will experience and what will eventually undoubtedly drive me out of this is the expectations that are placed on me, the ways that my work is constantly minimized, or the assumptions made about me, and this odd choice that I feel I'm coming up against too, as a person who is relatively newly married, has no kids, around what is the life that I want to live, and how to social justice work embed itself into that. And I feel like I am like a social justice warrior. I feel that in my blood. I feel that from my grandmothers who were teachers in integrated schools in New Orleans and North Carolina throughout their entire career. Like, this work is my passion.
Mm,
And I can't imagine what it would be like to try to grow a tiny human inside of me while doing my job right now. And
right.
that's the sort of stuff that's going to push me out. When I have my board meeting tomorrow and I'm like nervously presenting my organizational budget to this group of people who I think support me, but who are going to ask me questions that I know they probably didn't never ask any of my predecessors. Like,
Mm,
that's the type of stuff that um, makes this really challenging.
mm,
And I
mm,
know we get to like some of the ways that like organizations and individuals in our culture can shift.
mm.
But y'all know, everyone here knows it's hard. It's real
Yeah.
hard.
Yes. Thank you, Malika. Lori. Thought.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that, Malika, because so much of it I was like, oh, do we work in the same place? We're having our experience is so similar. And it's funny when Dr. Evans and Daisy reached out asking if I wanted to be on the panel, I was like, I'm not sustained. Why are you all asking me if I want to,
Yeah.
be a part of this panel? Because I feel like I'm really, really in the daily struggle to the point where, like, I wake up and I feel sometimes like a sense of dread when I think about like opening my laptop. But
Mm,
then, I caffeinate, I get to the laptop, and then I feel so much like I'm asked to be a caregiver. And I think that that sense is something that is really mind blowing to me, of like having to show up and not only like perform the duties of my role and go above and beyond, but also lend emotional support to my team. And this is not necessarily always like in my current role. For all my career, I feel like I've been relied on to be a coach and do
mm,
my job. And even while that's happening, the goalposts keep shifting. So with every new role that I get into, is like, it was okay if it was mid before I joined the role, and now it needs to be excellent. And
mm.
I
Come on.
already have excellence, I already have a standard of excellence for myself, but then it feels sort of like, you know how you challenge yourself all the time to be better? Is sort of like that happening at work makes you chase this thing that feels really elusive
Mm,
without the coaching or support. And it's just like, when does it end? Um, so I think, as I think about what sustainability would look like for me, I've been trying to set like more realistic goals for myself, but then also, asking work, what does it look like for me to be successful? And sometimes that seems like a new question that, has to get asked after I get into the role. So
mm.
that has been has been something.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Wow, thank you both for sharing. Maybe we can take a deep breath. All that wisdom you have dropped already.
Yeah.
Thank you. And to the point, Lori, of the continuously moving goalposts, or, that the feeling that, oh, I don't think you're fulfilling the job the way you thought. And yet your predecessor definitely wasn't held to that same expectation. Um, that kind of murkiness is a ripe environment for bias, specifically racism, to take over, right? And so, one of the ways Embracing Equity as a startup um, has attempted to mitigate that bias is by creating job specific competencies, outlining observable behaviors, and clear metrics that we could use to evaluate our performance, seek the support that we need for our goals, and make sure that we are all speaking the same language, looking at the same KPIs, and on track together. And so, therefore, it's not just like, I feel like you're not doing this job right to the best of your ability. No, we can actually observe and measure that and structure that into our annual review, which you would lead, right? So there's a lot of ways in which organizationally we have designed ways to mitigate this bias. And so here's a copy that you all can make and use the template in your own organizations in thinking about how are we mitigating bias when it comes to performance reviews, performance evaluations. How are we sussing out the ways people need support in order to do the job? There are concrete tools that we are happy to share and walk through with you. So hopefully that is helpful. I also want to articulate that, like, the issue with supporting leaders of color, women of color, is obvious. Like, there's overwhelming data on how this has reached crisis levels. And there's a nuanced way in which it particularly impacts Black women with that anti-Blackness, misogyny. And I shared some of my own experience as an Asian American woman going through this in my latest blog post about how I almost quit in 2023. And it's really it's interesting to me because I don't have a white boss, but I do in my mind. He lives in my mind, and he is cruel. And I had to reckon with, like, wow, I'm the founder and CEO of this organization, and I'm doing it to myself. Yeah. It is so internalized, these expectations, the deeply unattainable goals that come at such a high cost. That's being reinforced in my own mind. Yes. And so there is a lot of healing work that comes from thinking about letting go of those old messages, those narratives that do not serve us and do not see our humanity, and then creating a new way of being, a new way of working that actually centers our humanity, right? That's our power. And so, I really wanted to start off the new year with this panel in examining this, because it's a crisis that, I am terrified at the end result, and do feel like we all have a responsibility to play, depending on your positional authority, your role in the organization. You can take different risks. And if you're a woman of color, those risks always have higher consequence.
Yeah.
So if you're a white person in an executive director, in a CEO position, you have even more responsibility to take on the risks, to change the policies and structures so that it doesn't fall, on the woman of color. It's not, you're not abdicating that responsibility. You're taking it on so that it doesn't become neglected or fall on the backs of women of color in the organization, right? Yeah. So that's what we want to look at specifically next, is this systemic push out of women of color in leadership or DEI positions, and this overwhelming trend of people who are realizing that the cost is too steep, right? It's not worth being a martyr. It's not worth our lives. So, Dr. Evans, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah. So, Daisy, you really talked about this systemic push out of women of color in leadership and DEI position. We all have been talking about that, right? really quickly, like, harkens back to the anti-racist summer of 2020 following George Floyd's death. There was a huge focus on DEI. Black women were hired as, really what we've come to find out now, as mascots, right? Because now they've slowly been let go after the hype has died down. This is anti-blackness and a worldwide, sentiment. And so, um, also just pointing, I'm just, as the kids say, we're bringing receipts, y'all. Just this past July, 6 DEI leaders quit senior roles in 1 month. In 1 month, from media companies like Disney and Netflix. Joanna Abiye, the BBC's creative diversity director, that was her title, decided to leave the position after she had held this position for just under 2 years. And she had been the third person to hold that role in 2 years. In 2 years, come on. So, just thinking about this, and this past summer, there was this big buzz. And the buzz was that BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color executives were expected to leave or be let go in the near future within this next year, between now and this summer, between then and this summer. So, my question in knowing that, knowing your experiences and watching this systemic movement for the panelists is this. The data is showing us clearly, y'all, that corporate America is failing in its commitment to diversity, which of course includes Black, Indigenous, women of color in leadership. What is your reaction to this happening in this cultural moment in 2024, when we have a presidential race that is contentious at best? We have candidates saying America has never been racist. Like, there's so much. That's another webinar. However, like, what is your reaction to this as this impacts you all specifically?
I think it was a McKinsey study, or maybe one popular study that was making its way around LinkedIn that I did see also, that said that 49% of the senior level leaders who are people of the global majority, they're leaving their companies to be able to advance. And every time I see it, I'm like, good for them. That's
Mm,
great that they can leave, that they have a vision that they're pursuing. I hope that, Daisy, you talked about the white boss in your mind. I hope that they can have the healing to deal with, the ways that they may speak to themselves in their work, because, since you said it persists even after you leave your company, we know that doesn't go away. But I think one of the things that I wanted to lift up as sort of my guidebook that has helped me think about burnout and where to go and what to do has been the book Sisters of the Yam. It was a really transformative book that I read just
mm,
before the pandemic, which I felt was really lucky. I felt really lucky to have come across it. And I think that it's essential because it's one of the only books that I've read that's about healing in a really holistic way, and how racism and sexism, being the water that we're swimming in, are things that are important to think about healing as a Black woman in particular. And I guess there's two kind of ideas that I think are relevant for this conversation.
mm,
The first one is that she talks about having, Bill Hooks is the author, and she talks about having community and maintaining our well-being as not nice to haves and must haves, and things
mm,
that require actively coming back to the drawing board of your life and asking yourself, am I getting all of my needs met? Not only in the role that I have career-wise, but also the life that I set up around myself. And then she also communicates that every Black woman should be aspiring toward giving herself a sabbatical. And I think, obviously I think she would widen the lens out to all BIPOC women. Like, this is something that we owe ourselves to do.
mm,
And ever since reading that, I've been thinking, I want to give myself that experience one day. I want to be able to step back from my career and think, what do I authentically want to do? Like, what excites me and what am I good at? And then how can I get myself into that sort of position. And I constantly reread the book because it makes me think so much about, like, I'm in editing mode. I have the right to come back to my life and figure out how can I get to my vision of community, career, love, all of the things. So I'm going to drop in my most relevant favorite quote that made me move from Cambridge to Chicago to be closer to family. It was really inspiring.
Right. I got it. I'm going to drop it in for you. From Lori. This is Lori.
Do you want to read it, Lori?
Yes, please.
Yes, definitely. When you wake up and find yourself living somewhere where there's nobody you love and trust, no community, it's time to leave town, to pack up and go. You can even go tonight. And where you need to go is any place where there are arms that can hold you, that will not let you go. And it makes me affirm, I guess, like, the big thing that I take away from it is that our healing and our well-being are urgent matters. And that, like, it is not noble to be a martyr. That the best thing that I can do in every organization that I'm in is show up as my full self. And when I'm not having that experience, it is okay to grieve the loss and say, okay, I'm going to get myself on a new path now.
Wow.
Wow.
So beautiful.
Yes.
You can even go tonight.
You can even go tonight. And that's not only, like, I'm reading that in both ways. Not only where you live in the community, where you go work in the community. Leave if that's what you need to do. That's how I'm reading it as we're having this timely conversation. Malika, join us. Talk to us. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's making me think too, like, leaving is a form, I think, of sustainability of the self. And I'm thinking about like our institutions and like how would we create cultures and spaces where that sort of leaving is possible, or the steps before that are possible. So like the other parts of the quote around like looking around and having the arms to hold you, I'm thinking about like a sense of belonging in the places where we are, and institutional accountability for establishing that. But also if we're in editing mode ourselves, right, like how are we finding that and bringing that in? Like, I don't know, this space is so beautiful with the four of us here and all of these people joining us in the chat, and like knowing that there are people sitting at the airport, like somewhere thinking about these same sorts of things. There's a beauty and power for me in imagining how we cultivate that. And I think a lot of this like factors into earlier when you were talking about competencies, Daisy and Lori, and I think about this in my organization. A lot of the work that I'm doing right now here is to depersonalize people from the work. There is a unique value add that I bring as a Black woman, as the leader of this organization. There is a lens that I have around community, around justice, around our legacy that is very unique. And it shouldn't be the case that I can't leave for 3 nights to go see my mom and this place not be able to continue, right? And so what are the structures that need to be in place here at my organization in terms of backups and checks and making sure that power isn't so consolidated in any one person? Power is information, power is authority, right? That's not so consolidated in one person, and especially not being like hoisted upon other leaders of common color, women of color in our organization, where they feel like they can't go and find that the days to be in the arms of people that they care about. So I love this quote, Lori. Yeah, I'm gonna go buy this book tonight too.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. Thank you all. And we also want to share our Embracing Equities sabbatical policy, so you all have that. If you don't already have one in place in your organization, this might be helpful as a guide on how we've structured it. We did it last year when I needed crisis medical care, and you know, that's not the time to do it. the time is to do it proactively, early, build it in to the organization, build in that sustainability. And it's not a, I thought I was thinking of it as a luxury, but it's
Mm,
not a necessity. It's a necessity if one of our goals in the organization is to sustain leaders of color. These kinds of policies, like the sabbatical policy, um, is a necessity. Another one to think about is coaching. That's a necessity. There's so many things that organizationally we can do. Right? We have modeling that we can do these things, and embracing equity being a startup, we had the privilege to start from a
yes.
blank slate. We're not trying to fix these old broken things. We got to start fresh and reimagine what would be possible with equity at the center. Yeah. So we want to share what we've done with you so that it can be an inspiration. And we've been able to guide organizations to do this and make the shifts.
Yeah.
So it is possible. We know that it is possible. You need the will and the skill to make the change. And so, specifically thinking about organizational change, how you sit in the organization is really important to consider when thinking about the individual actions that you can take. So going back to, if you are in the CEO or executive director position, you have the power and the authority to enact a lot more organizational changes. That is your responsibility. It's going to be very difficult without that person's support to make any of these changes. And so, depending on that positional power, right,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
take different risks. And for especially social impact fields love to say, we're a flat organization, we share power, blah, blah, blah. Well,
Yeah.
there's real decision making power. Like, there is clear power at play.
Yes.
And trying to hide that or veil it is sometimes even more dangerous, because it makes it more obfuscated how decisions are made, how change happens, right? So being really clear about the power structure and analysis of the organization and transparent about it is very important to be able to make any of these changes, and arguably is part of sustaining leaders of color. Is like, you're not guessing who
Right.
has power, where does your power sit. It's truly like being transparent and very clear about how the organization runs and how decisions are made.
Yeah.
And then you, as the person with less positional power, if you have to guess, you are having to then create order, right, where there isn't. So that's more labor that goes into trying to figure things out, these systems out. And so really wanted to make that very clear when thinking about organizational change. Where is the power? Where's the power analysis? And how does your role fit into that matrix to create change?
Thank you, Daisy, for really lifting that up for us. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit and ask the panel to share some of the what are things that organizations can do to sustain and maintain, right? Some of the things that and then what can you do individually, right? Some of the things that come to my mind is to be proactive, not reactive. Oh, this is happening, so let's scramble and get something together, right? I mean, even in an organization such as Embracing Equity, that's what we had to do when Daisy had some health complications. We needed to say, all right, we need a sabbatical leave. So in that particular case, we were reactive, but as much as you can be proactive, be proactive. Track the data. We've shared throughout this webinar, there's data, there's study, there's track your own data, find out what's really happening. Here's another part. Here's how we sustain and retain leaders. Create and cultivate a culture of belonging. We each need to feel like we belong and that we can show up in each organization as our authentic selves. Offer affinity spaces. Build community right there in the organization. Again, we're going to go back to what we said. Have clear job competencies, have true metrics to evaluate job performance. You should never hear from your people that you're reporting, well, I feel like, here are the job competencies, here are the observable behaviors. Look at that resource that we dropped, y'all. It's a good one. Here's where we can measure your actual performance, right? That helps us diminish bias. Bias is never in our favor. That's sabbatical policy. Have that. All right. Malika, Lori, you all have anything else to add to what people can actually do organizational wide to support and sustain leaders of color?
I think a big one is recognizing that harm is going to happen. White supremacy is in the air all around us. Even as Daisy said, like the little white boss in your head in an organization that has been so intentional around crafting a different work experience. But we know harm is going to happen. And so really thinking intentionally about conflict policies and harm repair procedures and practices. Our organization tries our best to lean into restorative practices as much as possible. And so that means proactively, like Dr. Evans was saying, like we have community circle, we are building trust and relationship. And then we're looking to do that on the harm repair side too, when harm has occurred. There's certainly like a lane and a role and amount of safety and clarity in clear HR policies, right? Like that is necessary. And I think for myself, for other women of color, I think, all of us as people to like do something different and survive a little bit better, really having the opportunities to like sit face to face when harm has occurred, to name how it's impacting us in our bodies, and to have central to that core a desire for relational repair, I think is really powerful. And that's something that, like, if you are in a position of power, you can implement in your organization, look at your like conflict policies and make changes. And if depending on the other power you have, right, that's something that you can try with your coworkers or try with your teams, or just like start holding these spaces where we can build relationship.
Thank you. Lori.
Yeah, I've had my favorite manager this year than I've ever had. Like, he's been phenomenal. And one way that he supports me is asking about what he can do to help me, or what he can do to support my growth. And I think that it's strange to me, like in nonprofits and education space, it's almost like people act like you're going to be there for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you just are intentional about saying, like, what opportunities can I give you to grow? How do you want to grow while you're here? Then it makes me more invested, because then it's about my learning and development, and not like exclusively in support of the organization. So more of that, but then also like taking another step, investing in my learning. I know a lot of people talk about the difference between mentors and sponsors and how important those are for women of color. I've had neither, I've not had that experience. So I'm looking forward to having the opportunity one day to have someone invest in my future.
So that takes us, we've talked about organization, that takes us to individual. Even though we don't want a lot of labor to be on it, particularly leaders of color, there are some things that we can do. One of the things that we were just talking about here is rest. Even in the middle of the workday, do some wholeness, breathe like we started this webinar, or just take a 10-minute rest break. I'm just gonna rest. There have been so many times, y'all, that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. But while I'm taking a break, I'm gonna answer this email. Well, like, this not a break. And to your point, Lori, ask for support such as coaching. Here's the thing. We want y'all to stay tuned, stay connected, keep following us, because embracing equity is planning to create a resource. And that resource is going to be a letter template that helps you ask for coaching. It's going to help you ask for that support. It's so necessary and needed. What other individual things could you do? Malika, Lori, what other things?
I'll hop in. I'm trying things because, like I said, I guess looking at 2023 and before, I think I was approaching my life in a way that was leading to more burnout, like waking up and getting on the laptop within 5 minutes of opening my eyes. And lately, my thought has been, how can I match or exceed the level of care and thoughtfulness that I have when I show up to work every day? Like, you're opening your laptop every day. I think all of us have these duties in our roles that you have to do every day. Well, what if I am a duty for myself every day?
Mm,
I went to I've been
mm.
going to this new gym, and I showed up once really early. Like, there's a 5 a.m. class, but I went to the 6 a.m. and I heard the coach say, like, this is your job. You are your job. Like, how is it that you can sit at your laptop for 8 hours, but you can't take an hour to move your body and like drink some water in the morning? So I think lately I've been trying to like track my activities. So I'm trying to I chose 3 non-negotiables for the first quarter of the year, and I have broken my streak already, but I haven't broken my streak at work. Like, I
Mm.
I'm an excellent worker, but not necessarily for myself. So I'm working on it, and that's what I'm doing.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
powerful data. Yeah. Thank you, Lori.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love thinking about that as data too. I think like it sounds like it adds a level of importance that maybe we haven't been giving ourselves. So I love that. And I think my advice is the same or similar. It's like thinking about the wholeness of our lives and where does
Mm.
work fit in. And especially for folks in this like social impact field, I think many of us are like here because we care about our communities and we're here
Yes.
for the broader movement.
Yes.
And I think we've got to benefit from that too, right? Like, if we are trying to make healthier, safer communities where folks are treated with love and care, then we've got to treat ourselves that way and then carve out the space to actually reap those benefits too. So I think intentionality is really great. My coach had me do a vision board last year that's like sitting right here in my office, right
Mm.
in front of me, constantly at eyesight. And some of the words that actually have come up in the conversation today are there, like say the quiet parts out loud is like on my vision board. And
Mm.
so I think that sort of intentionality, this board isn't about work, this board is about me. And so
Love it. Love
keeping
it.
me at the center is really important.
Love it. Love it. All right, y'all. Let's open it up for some Q&A. Will you all, if anybody has questions, will you drop the questions in the chat and someone on the panel will respond? Questions for us around this topic.
I just want to hop in with a quick answer to Amanda's question. I don't have all of the solutions around sustainability, but one thing that I really have been thinking about here is succession planning from the beginning when I stepped into my role. And I think to
Mm.
Lori's point, like, I think there is a really antiquated view that all of us should work in our jobs, one job for our entire lives. And that puts so much pressure on individuals, especially women of color, to be like the perfect person forever in this role and have no vision of where we're going next. And so
Yeah.
I think one thing I'm cultivating with my board is like, I've probably got 5 to 7 years here, and you probably don't want me for more than 5 to 7 years, right? It's time for
Mm,
new talent to come in there. And if I
that's
think about my work in that way, then I think I will make different choices around my life similarly. And
love that.
hopefully, they will view me as like a person who is here for this perfect or this little amount of time. So, how do I treat that person with the care so that they can do the work for the time that they're here? That's just one thing that I've been thinking about.
Love that. As you're thinking about your questions, if you want to dive deeper on any of this, specifically for your own organization and maybe the uniqueness of your context, then we're going to drop a link. It's a gift to you. Sign up for a free 30-minute chat to talk to us. Bring your problems, your current staff retention and evaluation plan. We can review it together to steer you in the right direction, to maximize your employee satisfaction, sustenance, and retention. So there it is. We're dropping it there. That's a gift for you. You being here. And what other questions? Here we go. I am neurodivergent, and I think that both makes me an exceptional leader and a workhorse that isn't taking care of herself. Any thoughts on how other folks manage that? Yeah.
I
Oh, I
have.
can say. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead, Lori. Yeah.
oh no, please. I'll grab my resource while you're talking.
Oh, okay, great. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, and so I recognize that so much of those characteristics are what make me a very effective workhorse.
Mm,
Um, and so draining on me. The toll it takes is very, very draining. Um, so I recently went on Adderall, and it was transformational for me. Um, Over the winter break, I kind of felt um, I don't know, the stigma of like taking the drugs, like I was like, oh, am I always going to be dependent? So I took a break. But my therapist was like, or my coach was like, you're digging with a stick and you have a shovel. Why
mm,
aren't you using the shovel? And when she put it like that, I was like, oh, yeah, it is a tool. It helps me tremendously. So just accepting the tools and the medication that helps me with it is huge um, um, in my own like self acceptance.
yes.
I want to show off my little tool too. Okay, this is my tracker that I'm using for my self care. So I have color coded and using stickers and everything to like tell myself what I need to do and what I'm actually doing, and it's
Mm,
working. It's like it's giving me. I really like I like putting a sticker up every night to say I'm meditating. So when I talked about the non-negotiables, each of the non-negotiables is associated with a different like visual indicator. And that has helped because it's like front and center. If it's blank, that means I've not done any non-negotiables for my self-care today. And that is not like I don't want to go to sleep in that case without
mm.
leaving that undone.
Awesome. We have you had the experience where leaders of colors who had it hard getting to where they are and pass that same on to you? How have you handled that? Where somebody's like, well, look, it wasn't easy for me, so it's not going to be easy for you. So I think, one of the things that I did when I was a leader of a school, anytime a person of color, a black, particularly that at that time there were new black folks joining the organization. We did the orientation, we went through all of that, and then we said, now we're going to go to lunch. We're going to have a different kind of orientation, right? So it wasn't quite that way, but when I was in that position to keep me grounded and not making things hard for other people, then 3 or 4 of us would gather around and say, we are here for you. For women, we'd say, we're going to have a black girl conversation, right? Here's what you can expect when you run into trouble or like, don't bury yourself. Come reach out. We are here for you. So find your people. Find your people. And again, I talked about it from upwards down, but I have been in that situation too. Just find your people. We're your people. Find your people. uh I want to go on, and realizing that we have this, we're at the end. How about we all collectively do a deep breath? Let's do it together. Breathe in, hold, and exhale. We've dropped in the chat link for free 30-minute sessions with us, y'all. Come into those 30-minute sessions. We can answer some of these questions for you one-on-one. We also do equity-centered coaching at Embracing Equity. We also do a year-long leadership residency. It supports you and your organization. We have so many things that we're saying. We are here for you. Also, get over soon to our website. We are actually launching a new one. It's coming, y'all. It's coming. A new look. We're going to drop it down there in the chat so that you can join us. We have free resources there, and we are your people. We are here living it and disrupting it at the same time, right? Thank you all. We got some people over there going, yes, I highly recommend join them. Listen to them, listen to us for sure, but listen to folks who have done this work with us. And we need you all. Join us in our next webinar, January 31st, and then keep going. We've got some big ones, some good ones coming up for you all, just like this one. Thank you to Lori, Malika, to Daisy. This panel was fire. And that's our commitment, is that we're going to put together people that you want to hear from, people who are going through the same thing you are. So we thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. Resources, y'all. We'll see ya. Real talk, real action.